past week and a half, I've been using the Pixel Fold exclusively, and as a first-time foldable phone user, I've always wondered what made folding phones so different from the normal phones I've been using for the past 15 some odd years, and that's why we're making this video today, so that we can go over the 6 most popular smartphone use cases and show you what actually makes the Pixel Fold different compared to a traditional smartphone like the Pixel 7, for example. Before we get started though, I just wanted to give AT&T a super quick shout out for sending this device out for review. Otherwise, I'd still be waiting until mid-July or potentially August for my own personal Pixel Fold, and we just don't have time for that. So with that said, let's just get right into it. Starting with the YouTube experience, let's be real, you're most likely watching this on YouTube, and that was the first aspect that I wanted to show off here. With the Pixel Fold, the biggest advantages regarding YouTube/content consumption start with the various folding modes you have access to with this new form factor. Personally, I like to use tabletop mode to enjoy content hands-free by just positioning your phone kind of like a laptop. In this mode, the top screen can effectively be a full-sized horizontal/landscape regular size smartphone, with the added benefit of having the second screen on the bottom to read comments or hunt for my next video without obstructing the content I'm already watching. YouTube will also be pushing out an update to add the player controls on the bottom half as well that they put in the promo material, but in the meantime, it's just for browsing content and comments. Tent mode is also another foldable exclusive feature that I liked using with YouTube. At first, I told myself I would never use tent mode no matter what until I was laying in bed one night and wanted to watch some videos while I fell asleep. With a traditional smartphone, I always have to jerry-rig a kickstand type solution or find objects to prop the phone against, where with a foldable, I could just put my phone on the nightstand in tent mode, plugged into the charger, and watch videos until my heart's content. So far, this is the only use case that I found for tent mode, just because 99% of the time, tabletop mode or using the inner screen itself made more sense. Regardless, that's the biggest difference I've seen with the foldable. Having the ability to prop this phone at almost any angle is a huge benefit in itself, whether you're in the house, at a coffee shop, or in the office. There's always some kind of use case for this folding form factor, which brings me to the inner screen. As you can imagine, it's also pretty great to use with YouTube just from a UI perspective. You just see so much more content to browse on the homepage. In your subscriptions feed, they're able to fit a lot more on the screen as well, and if you watch in full screen, you get a much larger picture for viewing content, approximately 30% more with the normal viewing setting. Something else I liked was the pinch to zoom feature. Normal smartphones can certainly do this as well, don't get me wrong, but on a foldable, the impact of pinch to zoom is much greater, as some content is so much more immersive when you fill that entire screen. Sure, you still get a cropped image, but to me, the experience is heightened when you can use as much of that 7.6-inch display as possible. Gaming on the Pixel Fold is next, and I find it to be a weird mix between the phone and tablet experience. For tablets, they have big, beautiful screens to enjoy games on, but touch controls can be hard to reach, at least for me anyways. With traditional smartphones, touch controls are super easy to work with, but on a tiny screen, the gameplay might not be as immersive or objects might be too small to see. With a foldable, touch controls are for the most part easier to reach with that inner display. You can be immersed in the content, and I find it especially great to pop open that large inner display for longer gaming sessions. The problem is, some games don't know what to do with that inner display, and because of that, some games are going to be cropped in and cut off some of the content. Most games I've tested work fine, like side scrollers or top-down games, while others cut off some of the UI, or in the case of COD Mobile, they lower your field of view quite a bit to squish everything into the screen. And while I understand this is the best we can do at this time, I was a little disappointed to see this outcome, especially as an FPS gamer. There are some ways around this. Thankfully, by default, you do have the option to rotate the fold into portrait mode, where some of the games look slightly better, or you can use the various folding modes for single screen usage, which kind of defeats the purpose. One last thing about the gaming experience, I feel like I have a moral obligation to inform you guys that Nintendo DS emulation is absolutely insane on this thing. I don't emulate Nintendo DS games on traditional smartphones because it's just a pain to fit all the content onto one screen, and to me, this experience alone is a huge aspect that makes foldables different, and I'm totally sold out on this feature. Let's move on to the social media comparison, and this is where things get really, really ugly. I'm sure you've already heard it, but there's very little support for social media media apps in the tablet space, both on Android and iOS for that matter, all I have to say is this is where traditional smartphones win for the most part. But there are some positives to show off for the Pixel Fold. On the inner screen, you have the option to put apps in landscape or portrait. Most apps have this letterbox look to it, and this stays no matter what rotation you're using. In terms of general use, letterbox apps still show slightly more content than traditional phones do, at least in Reddit or Twitter, compared to some apps that actually show you less, like Facebook or Instagram, because they just fill up the whole screen and crop a bit no matter what. Of course, using the web versions of these apps will yield better results, but I don't think anyone buys a foldable to use the normal web version of applications, so this is what we have to deal with for now. Traditional smartphones definitely win in this category, but I will say, if you're able to find some third-party apps for the social sites you do use, everything gets a lot better. Not sure who's still using Reddit after the whole third-party fiasco, but Now for Reddit and Relay for Reddit are amazing third-party apps that are still going to be functional for the foreseeable future. Both of these apps actually take advantage of the tablet size. There's no cropping, no letterboxes, and we get a full screen experience in both landscape or portrait mode. I think it's personal preference, but I think Relay is better in terms of style, while Now for Reddit uses the space better and is more functional. If anything, just don't use the default Reddit app. It is absolutely terrible on these folding phones. The next big thing we should compare is the camera experience between the traditional smartphones and the Pixel Fold. Of course, the cover screen viewfinder feature is great. I find the average person might not know where to look or even realize which camera is taking the photo, so I find myself coaching people often not to look into the selfie camera and only to look at the main camera when I take a photo. The issue is people are so ingrained to look at themselves before taking the photo, so normally I get a handful of photos with some people looking at the selfie camera and other people looking at the main, and trust me, when people look at the selfie camera in this mode, it's super noticeable. This is something that requires a small learning curve for everyone that's never seen this feature before, and because of that, I give a small edge to traditional smartphones just in the perspective of the average user. Obviously, tech people know the deal here, that the main camera will always take better photos, and if you get good at explaining to people where to look and why, it's a solid feature. Something more straightforward is using the camera while in tabletop mode. This is actually an awesome feature that will automatically trigger when you put the phone into position. Once in place, you do have a ton of benefits normal smartphones don't. The intended use is to set your phone on a table, tilting the camera to the right angle, and using the hands-free palm timer gesture included in the June feature drop to take a photo. In practice, this works exactly as expected. It feels natural, and I really like that you can still access almost all of the camera controls with the touch of a button without obstructing your view. Of course, you can also use the camera intent mode. I haven't found any practical uses for this in my time with the Fold, but I'm sure people will get creative and figure something out. Real quick, let's take a look at the actual system/UI differences between the two devices, and then we can talk about the Google Chrome experience. For the general interface, there are a few new features that help set the Pixel Fold apart from the traditional smartphone UI. For starters, the taskbar is new and naturally has become a feature I use on a daily basis. It's nothing crazy or groundbreaking, just a good use of space. With a slow swipe up, you can access some static apps and have some recommended ones based on your usage. Hit that little 9-dot grid at the bottom and you'll have access to your entire app library, which is pretty convenient. There are some other features that differentiate the Fold from traditional smartphones, like Gboard's split keyboard function. At first, it does take some getting used to, but over time, your brain will naturally adjust. Some other general UI tweaks are in regard to the notification shade. With the Pixel Fold, they take advantage of the larger screen by just showing you more toggles and spreading out the UI to use the whole screen. Probably my personal favorite use, or I should say something that I'm experimenting with, is tabletop mode for just general use. Sometimes I don't want to pick up my phone constantly in order to respond to text or do minor tasks while I'm working. To that, I'd say having my phone sit in front of me on my desk in tabletop mode has been helpful in that regard. Whether it's responding to text or doing a quick search or just general navigation, the top screen almost always gives me the most important content, and I like that I don't have to do the awkward leaning forward on a desk maneuver to get the angle that I want from a traditional smartphone. Whereas on foldables, you kind of just use it like a mini laptop and put it at the angle that's useful for you. This is an aspect that I think Google should continue to build on with foldables as they get more popular, just because I can see many consumers using their devices this way over time. And finally, let's chat about some of the differences in Chrome. Surprisingly, this wasn't as big of an impact as I imagined, but there are some changes I wanted to mention. The Fold does take some inspiration from the desktop version of Chrome. You get immediate access to the back, forward, favorites, and download toggles. You also get the desktop style tabs, whereas on mobile, they're hidden behind a menu. And when browsing the web overall, the desktop versions of websites do give you a lot to work with. When it comes to search, generally some elements on the Fold just filled out the space, while other aspects actually do take advantage of the extra screen size. This applies mostly to side-scrolling content like the little chips in Search or info cards that scroll horizontally. Overall, you get a little bit more content and a bigger canvas to view it on. Like I said, not a ton of changes here, but something I wanted to let you guys know about. At the end of the day, as a new foldable user, I see the potential, and what we do have is pretty fun to play around with. On the other hand, I kind of expected more, and since this is a Pixel device, I have the expectation that Google will actively build on this over time, which is something you should keep in mind if you're picking up a Fold. To me, every single feature drop should be adding more and more foldable functionality as Google takes all the feedback in, so hopefully 6 months from now, the video that I make has even more changes I can show you. But for now, these are the biggest differences that I could spot between a traditional Pixel and a folding Pixel. Either way though, I hope this video gave you the context you were looking for. I'm gonna get out of here so I can work on the next video, so thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Jordan Floyd with 9to5 Google, and I will see you in the next one.